Side. All right, perfect. Well, we'll do this and then we'll just get started. All right. Well, happy Thursday, everyone. Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. We're doing this a little bit early. Sorry about that. Sorry also if you hear a little echo. I'm in the downtown property and it's rather empty, but we didn't want to miss the opportunity to give you two things today. One, tease for Sabbath on our sermon, and then two, one remaining Q&R from last week. So let's get to it. Pastor Henry, give us a little teaser of what we're going to be covering this Sabbath at the Seventh Collective.
Ooh, well, Pastor Michael is giving you a teaser of the downtown property, which there will be more announcements about that soon, I am sure. I get to tease you, well, not really tease, promise you the fun, excitingness we are going to have this weekend as we continue our series in Matthew. We're nearly done with that series. Can you believe it? But we will be in Matthew chapter 25, which itself is a continuation of Matthew 24. But we're not dealing so much with any sort of prophetic outline as much as Jesus is then going to respond to something he says at the end of 24, right? Where he says, be ready, for the Son of Man comes in an hour in which you do not think he will, basically. And so what does it mean to be ready, basically, is what he's going to answer. How do we live in the here and the not yet, right? How do we live then and in the future, waiting for Jesus to come? And we're going to learn that our behavior reveals our belief, and that the kingdom of heaven is going to demand not only that we wait for Jesus, but that we prepare for him faithfully, we invest boldly, and we care concretely right up until the time he arrives. So we're going to be learning all about that. Matthew 25, you do not want to miss it this Saturday at the Seventh Collective. But before we get to Matthew 25, we have a remaining question on Matthew 24, Michael.
Yes, absolutely. So let's jump right into it, Pastor Henry. Here we go. It is a little bit longer, so I will read it here entirely. Since before 1844, Adventists have thought the end was near. Matthew 24:19, specifically referenced, seems like it would or will scare women or couples from getting pregnant if they feel we are getting close to the end of times. It seems that it creates mental conflict with the verse to be fruitful and multiply. How should a married couple move forward and make decisions to grow their family, taking these verses into consideration, knowing we are always moving closer to the end of times?
But believe it or not, this is not the first time I have heard some sort of iteration on this question. So thank you for submitting that, whoever did. All right, so what they're referring to, Matthew 24:19, right? This is where Jesus says, woe to those who are with child and those who nurse babies in those days, right? Really bad. Well, the short answer to that, I would say, is, first of all, that verse is an expression of Jesus's compassion. It is not a prohibition on family formation. Okay. In the context of Matthew 24, this is grief language. It's not a warning sign. Okay. Listen, he's not telling people in verse 19, he's not telling his followers to avoid pregnancy. Okay. He's lamenting. It's the same way I would say, oh, mercy, help the elderly during that disaster, or help the children in the tsunami. Or, right, if you knew a catastrophe was coming somewhere, right, and you knew that the population of that area was predominantly people who couldn't help themselves or somebody who was struggling, right? I mean, Jesus saying this is him revealing his heart for the vulnerable. It's not a command to the family. Okay, you might remember in Matthew 24, what he's referring to at this point is almost certainly the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in AD 70. Okay, now think about it. Pregnant women and nursing mothers are going to have the hardest time fleeing out of a city, okay, that is under siege. Like, there's just a lot that goes into that, and that's easy for me to say as a man, right? But this is situational grief. It's not a universal deterrent to childbearing. Okay, now to the broader tension, all right, that's Matthew 24, but to the broader tension, they go, well, I think the speaker said, well, what about be fruitful and multiply, the command in Genesis, right? Versus the end is near, okay? Well, here's the thing. Adventists have been living, our particular denomination, right? Seventh-day Adventists have been living in this tension at least since the 1840s.
Right.
Okay. And just spoiler, here's the track record that even the Adventist experience tells us. Every generation has been called to live faithfully in the present tense. That was also our Matthew 24 series. If you don't trust Jesus now, you're not going to trust him when he comes again, right? You're not going to last the end times if you don't trust him now. Listen, our grandparents, spoiler, had children during the Great Depression. They had children during World War II. They had children during the Cold War. I mean, each one of these are more recent decades when every rational indicator, and I've read even church publications wrestling with this, right, in times past, that said, hey, the world may not hold, right? Danger, like, Jesus could be coming soon. And yet here's the thing, think about it. They had children, and those children became the ones who built churches, raised families, and carried the gospel forward. Okay? Matthew 24 is about watchfulness, not paralysis. Right? We talked about this at the very end of the sermon, Matthew 24. I said, don't look out, look up. Okay? Watch, therefore, in Matthew 24, when Jesus says that, is an active, engaged, present tense posture. It's not a retreat from normal rhythms. Okay? Marriage, family, work, planting, building. Those aren't signs of unfaithfulness. Okay? I mean, and yes, Jesus himself noted, I think it's like verse 38 of Matthew 24, right, that people were marrying and giving in marriage right up to the flood. But his point wasn't that they were sinning by doing that. His point was that they were unaware in life's rhythms of where they were living. Okay. His concern was their lack of awareness, not an abstention from life. Right. The corrective is being aware of the times, not leaving life. Okay, so to the question, I guess final thing I'd say to the question, is this a good time in history to have a child? Which kind of sounds what maybe the question was asking, right? I would just argue that's the wrong question to bring to God. And I know that's easy for me to say when I don't have children of my own yet, but just hopefully listen to me pastorally. I think the wrong question to bring to God is this a good time in history to have a child? Because by that measure, no generation would ever have children.
Right.
Okay. I think if that's the question you ask, we'd be extinct by now. Nobody would have that. I think the better question pastorally to bring to God is this a good time in our life, our health, our relationship, and our calling to welcome new life? In other words, it's a stewardship question. It's not a time of the end question. And Scripture actually equips you to answer stewardship questions, right? Children born in the shadow of the end times are not a liability. They are, in the biblical imagination, rather, I'd say even a sign of hope, a declaration that the future belongs to God, that we trust in him with it. And having a child is an act of faith, not an act of naivety, okay? But the bottom line is, don't let end time anxiety make decisions that belong to prayer, to discernment, and to covenant, right? That belong to situational awareness. Watchfulness and faithfulness, not even faithfulness, watchfulness and fruitfulness are not opposites in Matthew 24. Okay, they're the same faithful trust in God, but pointed in different directions. Okay, so the same thing should be for children. Right? These are stewardship questions. Ask, is now the right time for us as a couple? Is now the right time in our particular set of circumstances right now that are within our control? You don't know the future. It could change. I get it, but now. And then with that same trust in God for family planning, it would be the same trust of God for what's ever going to happen at the end of times, whenever that hour and day comes when he arrives. So I hope that makes sense, but that would be my statement there. The whole point of Matthew 24 is awareness, not abstention. Right.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Small reminder of all things where we put in our hope. So
yes.
Where we put in our trust.
Don't look out, look up.
That's right. Absolutely. Maybe we should make that a shirt or something. Yeah, I think that could be a good shirt.
Could go on our merch site.
Yeah, maybe coming soon. Don't know if that's a plan, but I think that's now a plan.
Yeah, we just say, don't look out, look up, and then on the back say, if you look out, it's a great disappointment. Okay.
Well, as always, thank you, Pastor Henry, for answering those. Thanks to everyone for letting us do this a little bit of a format during our normal time that we have scheduled for tomorrow. We have some conflicts, so we're just going to tackle it this way this week. So other than that, look forward to seeing you Saturday. And as always, come early for Bagel Bar. We will see you then. Have a great week.
See ya.